My name is Jonathan Keller, and this is something I never thought I would still feel years later. Christmas dinner at my parents' house had always followed the same script. The same long table. The same heavy plates. The same quiet rules about what could and couldn't be said. I showed up that night already tense, but I told myself to keep my head down, smile when needed, and leave early if things felt off. I had learned over the years that survival sometimes meant silence. My father, Richard Keller, sat at the head of the table like he always did. He carried authority in the way he held his fork, in the way conversations paused when he cleared his throat. My mother, Linda Keller, moved between the kitchen and dining room, pretending not to notice the tension that always followed him like a shadow. My sister, Paula Keller, laughed too loudly at his jokes, eager to stay on his good side. I was the odd one out. Always had been. Dinner started normally enough. Polite conversation. Comments about the weather. Questions about work. I answered carefully, choosing my words the way you choose steps on thin ice. When my father asked how my job was going, I told him it was stable. I didn't brag. I didn't complain. I knew better. He laughed anyway. Stable, he repeated, shaking his head. That's what people say when they're afraid to admit they've settled. The table went quiet. I felt my face heat up, but I stayed calm. I told myself it was just a comment. Just another small cut I was supposed to ignore. But Richard wasn't finished. He started talking about my cousin's promotion, about how proud he was of people who actually aim higher. He looked directly at me when he said it. Every word felt deliberate, like he was building toward something. I focused on my plate, counting breaths, hoping he'd move on. Then he asked me why I was still renting instead of owning a house. I reminded him gently that housing prices had changed, that I was saving responsibly. He snorted and said excuses had become my specialty. A few relatives laughed awkwardly. No one defended me. Something in my chest tightened. Richard leaned back in his chair and said he didn't understand how he had raised someone with so little ambition. He said he was embarrassed explaining my situation to other people. He said Christmas was about family pride and I was making that difficult. The words hit harder because of where we were. Because of who was watching. Because of how casually he stripped me down in front of everyone. I felt small. Exposed. Then he stood up. He said if I was going to bring that kind of disappointment into his house, I didn't belong at his table. He told me to take my coat and leave. Right there. In front of my relatives. In front of the people who were supposed to be family. No one spoke. My mother stared at the floor. My sister didn't look at me. Plates sat half-finished, steam rising like nothing had happened. I waited for someone to say something. Anyone. No one did. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I grabbed my coat and walked toward the door. As I reached for the handle, my father said something about maybe this would motivate me to do better. I stepped outside into the cold night air and closed the door behind me. I sat in my car for a long time without starting the engine. My hands shook. My chest felt hollow. I replayed the scene again and again, wondering how I had become the easiest target in the room. How humiliation had become entertainment. That night changed something in me. I stopped chasing approval that only came with conditions. I stopped believing that blood guaranteed respect. I realized that silence hadn't protected me. It had invited more damage. I didn't cut my family off immediately, but I pulled back. I stopped attending gatherings where I knew I'd be diminished. I stopped explaining myself to people who only listened to judge. I built a quieter life, one where my worth wasn't debated over dinner. Years later, my father tried to act like nothing had happened. He asked why I didn't come around anymore. He said family should stick together. I told him the truth. I told him I left that night not because he ordered me out, but because I finally understood that staying meant agreeing with how he treated me. Christmas still comes every year. I still feel a tightness in my chest when the lights go up and the tables fill. But I no longer sit where I'm not wanted. I no longer accept humiliation disguised as honesty. Being ordered out hurt. Being silent for so long hurt more. That night didn't break me. It showed me exactly where I stood. And once you see that clearly, you don't forget it.